Reading comprehension is the ability to read text, process it, and understand its meaning. Students often find it difficult to comprehend or make meaning of text when they lack any of the following: comprehension strategies, a purpose for engaging with the text, background knowledge of the content in the text they are reading, and basic knowledge of the structures and features in the text. In their book, Mosaic of Thought, Keene and Zimmerman stated that students generally comprehend text better when they can make different types of connections with said text. Making connections is a comprehension strategy that can assist in identifying connections. Making connections focuses on creating three different types of connections. The first is text to self, the second is text to text, and the third is text to world. Text to self refers to the connections that readers make between the text that they are reading and their own past experiences and/or background knowledge. Text to text refers to connections that readers make between the text they are reading and other texts the readers have read before. Other kinds of text might include songs, other books, scripts, movies, television shows, and poems. Text to world refers to connections that readers make between the text and the bigger issues, events, and concerns of society. To make these types of connections, the reader must think about what is going on in the world around them. To successfully use this comprehension strategy, it is imperative that educators spend time demonstrating to students how to make meaningful connections. Teachers should model text-to-self connections initially with selections that are comparatively similar to a student's own experience. A key phrase that prompts text-to-self connections is, "This reminds me of." For example, if students are looking at the story of Little Red Riding Hood, they could draw connections from a time they felt afraid. Teachers should then model how to make text-to-text connections. Sometimes when we read, we are reminded of other texts. Encourage students to consider the variety of texts they have experienced. For example, if you are studying a Shakespearean play, you can encourage students to draw connections between themes found in the play and themes of some popular culture texts. Text-to-world connections are the larger connections that a reader brings to a reading situation. Often, it is the text-to-world connections that teachers are trying to enhance when they teach lessons in science, social studies, and literature. An example of a text-to-world connection would be when a reader says, "I saw a program on television that talked about the things described in this article." Chris Tavani, a leading researcher in the field of reading comprehension, offers many reasons as to why connecting to the text helps readers. She states that it helps readers understand how characters feel and the motivation behind their actions, and it helps readers have a clearer picture in their head as they read, thus making the reader more engaged. She also says that it keeps the reader from becoming bored while reading, it sets a purpose for reading and keeps the reader focused, and that readers can see how other readers connected to the reading, and it also forces readers to become actively involved in the lesson. When teachers suspect that students may lack the ability to make meaningful connections, classroom instruction will be necessary to bridge the gap between reading experiences and authors' assumptions. Building the necessary background knowledge is a crucial means for providing support and may be used to preempt reading failure. Here are some examples of questions that you can use to enhance your classroom instruction. Text to self. What does this remind me of in my life? What is this similar to in my life? How is this different from my life? What were my feelings when I read this? Text to text. What does this remind me of in another book I've read? How is this text similar to other things I have read? How is this different from other books I have read? Text to world. What does this remind me of in the real world? How is this text similar to things that happen in the real world? How is this different from things that happen in the real world? How did that part relate to the world around me? As a final thought, let's reflect back on the types of connections students can make. The first is text to self, the second is text to text, and the third is text to world.
Created using Powtoon.